What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and Marvel has changed the origin of Nightcrawler and is the talk of the town, and people who don't know anything about Marvel Comics are pissed off about it. So, the way this whole thing basically opens up, and we'll get to the origin here in a second, but the way it opens up is, in effect, Mystique has kind of like survived the whole attack on Krakoa and everything, but she's just sort of popped in and out of the X-Men comics, just babbling on and screaming about where her baby is, and nobody really knows for sure, right? But Nightcrawler ends up showing up here, and that's where this conversation takes place. We'll talk about why it is. It seems like her mind's broken, because that becomes a very important part of this as time goes on. But the long and short of this is that she runs over the initial origin that we were all, for the most part, aware of when it came to Nightcrawler. And it's actually Marvel tapping into two different origins. The first one is X-Men Unlimited from 1994, and the other one is Uncanny X-Men 428 in 2000, whenever it was, written by Chuck Austin. And the whole thing about this is that in those origin stories, the only thing we knew from the old X-Men Unlimited comic in the 90s is that Nightcrawler was the son of Mystique. And like, that was it, right? There was just a guy who was there that she had basically gotten knocked up by, and then he was born, and then he was thrown off a bridge because she panicked, and like, that was it. In that story, Mystique kind of filled it in by saying like he was the son of like a wealthy baron, more or less, or like a wealthy man. But like, that's really all it was. In Uncanny X-Men 428, that expanded on that original story vastly, and it introduced like Christian Wagner. And the idea is that Mystique herself was operating as a woman named Rachel Wagner, the wife of Christian. But Christian himself simply couldn't have kids. And the result of this is that when you had Mystique, who came across Azazel, and Azazel was, of course, this kind of like demonic entity that looks almost exactly like Nightcrawler, just different colored skin, that he had essentially gotten her knocked up. But this was done more out of the fact that she was kind of swindled with him, right? Like, she was really legitimately in love with this guy. But as soon as he found out she was pregnant with his child, he bailed, because his goal was to just spread his seed across as many women as he possibly could, and then take off on them as soon as the deed was done. And so in response to that, and with her husband basically laying with her and kind of putting two and two together, right? Saying like, you know, we had the doctors do a test, and the doctors revealed you can have children, but for whatever reason, I can't get you pregnant. Obviously the problem's me, but then now you're suddenly pregnant at the same time that Azazel takes off. Everybody's talking, everybody believes that you slept with Azazel. We should do some kind of paternity test. She immediately killed her husband. And then from there, she just kind of masqueraded as both the husband and the wife at different points in time. What this does, at least this new origin, is it comes back and it changes everything. And what it really reveals here is the fact that Nightcrawler is the child of Irene Adler, also known as Destiny, and Mystique, which is kind of an interesting thing, because in the story itself, Nightcrawler kind of asked the question, like, how in the world can the two of you procreate? You're both women. And her response is like, don't be dumb, right? Like, do you really believe that when I take on the form of a person that it's surface level? And there's actually an argument for this, right? In Marvel Comics, there's a character named Copycat, Vanessa Carlyle. She actually has the ability to not only take on the physical appearance of other people, but actually copy her powers. So it is a bit of an adjustment to the historical powers of Mystique, in the sense that she doesn't just take on someone's physical form, she modifies herself all the way down to the genetic level. And so what she reveals here is that when her and Irene Adler, when her and Destiny first met, they of course fell in love. But the issue is that having a love affair between two women at that point in time was highly forbidden. And so in order to operate under the radar, what they'd done is they had, at least Mystique had brought Destiny on as what was in effect a maid. Now, this is where things start to shift, and this is where things get different. That Azazel did take notice of Mystique, and he was very much enamored by Mystique. And where he initially intended to procreate with her, and there was a kind of affair going on there, as soon as you had Irene Adler, who told Mystique, like, I want us to have like a family, Mystique immediately ended the relationship with Azazel, seemingly before she ever got pregnant. And then in turn, Mystique got Destiny pregnant. Now, here's the kicker about this, right? And this is why a lot of those YouTube channels that are complaining about this have no idea what they're talking about. So one of the things to know is that this was always the plan of Chris Claremont. And in fact, this was laid out in an interview that was not really done by Claremont, but was done by Scott Lobdell, which was done by way of really a blog post more than anything else, where he revealed that the original intention of Chris Claremont was for the father of Nightcrawler to actually be Nightmare, but that was shut down by Marvel. It was actually shut down by Roger Stern because he didn't like the idea of mutants being secretly related to one another, which seems to fly in the face of everything dealing with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. But the bigger point here is that in this interview that Scott Lobdell did from back in 2011, he actually revealed that Claremont had intended for Mystique and Destiny to have a kid together, but Marvel put the kibosh on it because at that point in time, especially under everything going on with Jim Shooter and even Tom DeFalco, that there was no way Marvel was going to allow Chris Claremont to publicly reveal that Mystique and Destiny were in a romantic relationship, let alone allow them to have a child together. So that origin was put on the back burner. And that's what led to the X-Men Unlimited origin in 1994, and then the expansion in Uncanny X-Men 428. And just for years, it was just the way that it was. So that's what's kind of cool about this, right? Is people are kind of like, I wish Marvel would go back to the days of Chris Claremont, right? This origin is stupid. Okay, well, this is Chris Claremont's original origin. So which one is it, guys? But the thing about this is that once this is revealed, right? Once Nightcrawler learns about this, you gotta get the rest of this story. And the reason for this being that in this instance, when the father, or really like Christian Wagner himself, walks in on what he believes to be his wife, Rachel, and the maid, that there is in effect a love affair going on here due to like just society at that point in time, they would have been killed. They would have literally been killed because that kind of thing was like a big no-no on a societal level. And so he even decides and goes so far as to like call them strumpets, right? Like safest perverts, right? He's like, I'll have you whipped and rolled in the gutter where you belong. And so in response, like, Mystique kills him right off the bat. Like she immediately kills this guy. And so that's one of the big differences here. The death of Christian Wagner is not predicated on the idea that he kind of put two and two together and realized that like Mystique had an affair with Azazel and that he's not the biological father, and that it would really just kind of destroy any credibility that he has among the people around him. Instead, it's predicated on the fact that he caught Mystique with her girl. And so in response to that, they just kind of leave this guy, right? They literally just execute him and like get rid of the body, and that's it. The kicker about all this is that once Irene gives birth to Nightcrawler, because of his physical form, he's considered this kind of monstrous creature, a demon. Is really what society at that point in time sees him as. And so what ends up happening here is that instead of her doing what she did in the original origin, this is especially an issue when like the doctor and the nurse come in and they see like Mystique and Destiny together and realize this child is like some kind of monstrous byproduct of a love affair from their perspective, that in turn, like she races off because they know the townspeople are coming for them. The townspeople are gonna kill them all. And so she basically puts Nightcrawler to safety, right? Literally sits him under a tree and then goes back for Destiny. But when she gets there, Destiny's gone. When she gets back to where the baby is, Nightcrawler's gone. And so seemingly Destiny had escaped, grabbed Nightcrawler and left. And so what this does is it kind of fast tracks a little bit, right? It jumps forward to what was in effect a whole kind of conversation and so on between Destiny and Mystique. And what Destiny revealed is that because of the nature of Azazel and because of the fact that she had this vision that Azazel was going to seemingly conquer everything, right? Like just by way of the fact that he's demonic and immortal and Marvel's vastly overestimating his powers, that there needed to be the illusion that effectively Mystique was pregnant with the baby of Azazel. Hence the reason why it was Irene Adler, Destiny, who told Mystique, pretend like you're pregnant, right? You can just kind of go forward and do your thing, and it looks like you and Christian are going to have a child together. Azazel will believe that he got you pregnant. He'll put his plans to conquer the earth on hold and that kind of thing, and like that'll basically be it. And then in turn, you and I can have our baby in secret and live our life. The issue here is that this caused irreparable damage between the two of them, right? It basically almost destroyed their relationship, but the love between them was strong enough that they sought out some alternative way to solve this problem. So they met up with Charles Xavier, and what Xavier agreed to do was in effect, quote unquote, wipe their memories of everything that had gone on, or at least modify their memories. The problem with this, and what Xavier literally told them to, is he said, I shall of course purge this whole conversation from my own mind, it's a private matter, you may find that you have the lingering sense of a favor owed. That seems fair, right? And so he says, but Miss Darkholme, right, talking to Mystique, I must warn you, I've observed that where memories have been perforated rather than removed, the mind will weave its own stories around the imperfections. Callous choices, false affections, you may find the version you remember even uglier than the truth. And so that's kind of like Cy Spurrier, the guy who's writing the story. That's his way, and really Marvel's way, of kind of coming along and saying, that's why Mystique remembers things differently than the way they actually were. But the reason why it's all flooding back here is because at the beginning of Fall of X, when Orchis forced Xavier to send all these different mutants through the portal, that in this moment, the false memories that were modified and adjusted by Xavier were wiped away, and they simply revealed the truth, and that this is the truth that Mystique was left with. Her mind was trying to kind of compare and trying to create some kind of reality or understand what was going on between these two things. But that's effectively the new origin, right? So it is what Chris Claremont originally wanted to do that Marvel wouldn't let him do because of the fact that it just was considered to be a no-no type thing from way back when, and that in turn, now Marvel's doing it because society is generally more acceptable. So it's a cool thing. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, and I will catch you all later. Peace.